Okay, hi everyone. Welcome to this meeting of Audit and Governance, and welcome everyone listening in, watching. I'm going to go through some notes and then we'll get into the agenda if that's okay. Just to introduce myself, I'm Councillor Neil Lawrenson. So do bear with me while I read the Chair's introduction. So this is indeed a public meeting, and members of the public and press are permitted to report on the proceedings. Reporting includes filming, photography, making an audio recording and providing commentary on proceedings. Please note that this meeting is being recorded and streamed live. The recordings will then be published on the meeting page of the Council's website for this committee. By choosing to attend this public meeting, you're deemed to have given your consent to being filmed or recorded and for any footage to be broadcast or published. If the alarm sounds in the Guildhall, we have to leave immediately. Please don't spend time picking up personal belongings. All emergency escape routes are clearly signed. Once you've left the building, please congregate on the High Street opposite the Guildhall. Members and other speakers are reminded to use their microphone when speaking. So thanks again for bearing with me. So agenda item number 1 is appointment of substitutes. And Julian, you just told me there's no substitutes?
Yeah, no substitutes. Yeah, everybody's present, correct, yeah.
Thank you very much. Agenda item number 2, so declarations of interest. Councillor Barnes.
For one of the items, item 12, which we don't have papers in public for, I actually work for Unison, so that might have an impact.
Just before we dive into agenda item number 4, the minutes of the previous meeting in September, 23rd September, I just wanted to seek your permission as a committee to slightly rejig the order of the agenda items. So you'll notice that at the end, number 12, we're due to receive a presentation, but a suggestion has been made that we bump that up the list to, I believe that come after agenda item number 5 on corporate risk management report. So with your agreement, I'm just looking for nods of heads. Have that presentation immediately after agenda item number 5, then the committee will go into closed session. It will mean that it's more logical to do it that way. It means that officers don't need to spend longer here than they have to. So that's okay? Cool. So number 12 will come straight after number 5. Thank you. So yes, we're going to look at the minutes of the previous meeting on the 23rd September this year. We'll take it page by page in terms of accuracy and any matters arising. Do bear with me, I'm just going to get them on my computer. Downloads, there we are. Okay, so page 1 of the minutes of the last meeting on the 23rd September. Bear with, I think I've got one. Page 2. Page 3. Page 4. Page 5. Come to the end. There we go. Page 6, that's done. No, all an accurate record, all agreed? Perfect, thank you very much. Okay, so as I said, after this next agenda item, we have a presentation. The next agenda item, number 5, first substantial item is Corporate Risk Management Report for the Q3 25-26. And hopefully come the end of hearing more about the report, we're going to note the contents. So yeah, I'm going to hand over to Rachel.
Yes, thanks, Chair. So the idea is that, you know, we discussed this previously. There's a number of corporate risks which CLT and the Council believe are the main pertinent risks at the highest level, the most important. We've got 13 live corporate risks, which are detailed in the appendices. They're rated by the risk owner. Then they go to corporate leadership team, and there's a little bit of challenge and like just double checking that we've got some sort of consistency with the ratings that are there. The idea for presenting these to audit committees for committee to have assurance that we've identified the right sort of risks as being the corporate risks, and that with providing information at a sort of a public level in this report, but being supplemented by these deep dives, which is your next agenda item, that you feel as though you've got assurance that the right processes are in place to give you comfort. As I said, the two risks that we'll be looking at in the next agenda item are staff related, staff resilience and staff resources. So happy to take any questions. I should say that it does say Q3, and I know we are not at the end of December yet, but we were just trying to get the right reporting. So if you don't mind just being a bit flexible with that date, but it's the latest updates that we were able to get, which we were able to feed into the committee process and the timeline. So thanks, Chair.
Thank you. And just before we take questions, comments, so talked about, you just mentioned deep diving into elements of risk. So that sort of derives from a suggestion from Councillor Teixeira. We had, and thank you again for the risk management workshop, which members attended. And then that suggestions led to the presentation that we're going to see tonight. So just in case you're wondering what the deep dives coming from, it's because we want to understand risk in more detail, but not all at once, because that's just too overwhelming, but bit by bit. So yes, any questions, comments on the report for agenda item 5, corporate risk management? I should make a note, thank you. Let's see if I can go around the room. Councillor Teixeira's said. Okay, we'll take your contribution, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I don't know if it's the right place to mention that we also discussed after the workshop the possibility of having some sessions for members, as appropriate, to have some sessions with officers, probably senior officers, to understand exactly the processes that are being used. So not just something on a paper that says, yes, we have a process and it's a tick, to actually fully understand how that process is put into effect. So I just wanted to get that understood. And this would not be everything, and it would absolutely be in a way that you can accommodate and not interfere with your work. But I do feel that for any committee members who feel they would like to understand this better, I think we have a responsibility to do that, basically.
If I may, Chair, so the idea of the deep dive is to have that sort of private discussion, access to people that are on the ground doing the mitigating actions for that specific risk. So that's why we've got Tammy here tonight and David, and Sean's picking up from the staff, like HR linked related items as well, so that, you know, they will give you information that we can't put in the public domain about their day-to-day work that is ongoing, about the processes, and then, you know, as part of that deep dive private session, you can have, you know, challenge, comments, whatever you might want to do. And then, you know, the next deep dive topic that we've suggested is climate adaptation. So again, we'll be picking officers that on a day-to-day basis are linked in with those mitigating actions. So you have access to the people that know about that subject matter, rather than just me or, you know, same familiar faces, if that's...
So I really appreciate that, and I just wanted to say it because not everyone was involved in that discussion or the email chains that brought that about. So I hope people will take full advantage of the information that we're going to have. Thank you.
Thank you both. Yeah, I've actually realised what another point to make, but I'm going to make sure we've captured all the others first. Councillor Jagger? Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you. I just want to apologise. I couldn't attend the workshop where these discussions took place, but I am really pleased with this report. It's very clear, straight to the point. It's everything that I would hope for in a report about risk. It doesn't have any jargon. It's, you know, for us working councillors who are busy, we can get to the point really quickly, and it's really, really well written, and so I'm very, very grateful for that. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I'll mention, yeah, thank you as well for the report. So I just want to draw attention to page 15, which is the very colourful and very clear, as has just been said, outline of what the risks look like. It's regarding financial stability. It says policy statement from national government is expected in November, which may provide some clarity before the provisional local government settlement is provided before Christmas. I read in The Guardian that yesterday the government said the outcome of its fair funding review is expected to be published on the 17th of December. So are those the same thing? So is the policy statement that was due to be in November, is that actually the fair funding review that's coming on the 17th of December? Or have I got those two mixed up?
If I may, so the policy statement did come out in November. Yeah, and the provisional local government settlement, which is due on the 17th, I knew it was week commencing the 15th, so any time after that. They are two separate things, but the policy statement would inform the provisional local government settlement. So the policy statement is about national initiatives, national levels of funding, and how they intend to distribute that funding across all of local government. The provisional local settlement actually gives our numbers for us. So that's the most important thing until we actually get some numbers on a spreadsheet to say, you know, Worcester City, you will get X thousand million from this route. We don't know, we're just surmising. And in the papers that have been released for P&R next week, there is a bit of a summary of the information that we've been able to glean from the policy statement and from the budget. So there's a consolidation of grants and things like that. So you might not want to read the whole policy statement, but the P&R report gives you a bit of a flavour in just a few paragraphs.
Thank you. Because it's marked as you know, high risk, but we're hopeful that we'll have a 3-year settlement. I mean, pending what, you know, the 17th of December.
It's certainly everything that we've seen in the policy statement and the budget is a 3-year settlement. So we should have our numbers for the next 3 years, starting with 26, 27.
Thank you. So, yeah, any other questions, comments? The report is for noting. Let me just go back to the top of it. Yep, so are we all in favour of noting the updated assessment of corporate risks at the end of Q3 as shown in the latest corporate risk report? Yes? Thank you very much. And thank you, Rachel. And can I just check, are we going into closed session now or not after net? Right. So apologies to everyone watching. I know there are thousands of you. Go and do something else. We'll be about 20 minutes, possibly. Maybe, yeah. Okay, well, we'll be as long as we are. So apologies everyone at home, and we're going to go into closed session and then we'll return to public session. Thank you. make an executive decision to press on, if that's okay, everyone. Hopefully, Councillor Jaggers is going to join us very shortly. Thank you for the praising the presentation we've had just a few minutes ago, and apologies to members of the public for the gap in proceedings, but we've had a very good presentation that you've not had the benefit of. We're going to move on to agenda item number 6, which is the internal audit progress report. We have 2 jobs to do. One is to note the report, and hopefully anyway, and we need to decide whether we're going to defer the risk management audit to next year. So I'm going to scroll down and hand over to Chris Green to present the report. Thank you.
Thanks, Chair. So this is the routine internal audit progress report that hopefully members are familiar with in terms of format, and it's designed to enable the committee to fulfil its role in overseeing the work of the internal audit function. It's covered on pages 27 to 44 in your agenda packs. And we're making good progress. The service is still fully staffed, and by early November we'd delivered 183 days against our full year plan of 275. Since the last meeting we've issued 2 reports. Those relate to a museum's exhibition planning consultancy review, and the second relates to the purchase card audit, which resulted in reasonable assurance. The main issues on that audit were around the high level of spend relatively, the high limits and the high number of officers holding a card, and management of agreed actions to address all of those points. Summary comments on each review are included in Appendix 1, and just as a reminder, the full reports from all our audits are saved in the members' shared area. We've issued a draft report for the Local Government Transparency Code audit, and the results of that will come to the next meeting. Similarly, work's also complete on the contract management audit, and the report will be issued shortly. We've also got field work in progress on budget setting and monitoring, environmental inequalities impact assessments, which will link in with potentially with the deep dive at the next meeting, IT asset management and on data protection. The fleet management and fuel usage audits are also underway, and then there's 4 more audits which are scheduled to start early in Q4. So overall we're on track to deliver the plan, and as per the previous meetings I expect to deliver your internal audit opinion on time. I'm also intending to bring a draft plan to the next meeting for 2026-27. So just as an early heads up, it would be useful if we could have any thoughts and contributions from members, if not today, then between now and up until mid-January, which then gives enough time for us to consider those any points, the contributions up until that point. In terms of implementing our recommendations, that's a positive story. At the end of March, we had 35 outstanding. The last meeting it was 10, and it's now just 5. So really good progress there, and there are no issues coming out of our work at this stage which in my view would impact negatively or significantly on the AGS for the current financial year. Turning to risk management, there's a recommendation in the report to defer the internal audit review. That was initially scheduled within our plan to be completed between January and March 2026, so the final quarter of the year. We'd like, with agreement, to defer that by 3 to 6 months. The reason for that being that this committee has only recently taken on responsibility for oversight of the risk management function. The new risk management strategy and the corporate risk register were only also reviewed and approved in September, so only a few months ago. Delaying will allow the new arrangements to bed in, because as part of an audit review, we're looking at the overall risk management framework and how well embedded it is at the council. Part of that is dealing with the member oversight. So having 1 or 2 more meetings where actually we've seen those deeper dives, I think will be beneficial. And then under the global internal audit standards, this committee's gatekeeper to our plan. So it's good practice to update the plan anyway to reflect emergent circumstances, but given that this committee is the gatekeeper, I'm asking you to approve the proposed deferral. So in conclusion, we're making decent progress. And members are asked to note, firstly, note the report, and secondly, to approve deferral of the risk management audit into 26-27. And I'm happy to take questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. Councillor May, straight in there. Yeah, so invite members to ask questions about the report or the decision or the proposal to defer the audit, risk management audit. If we could take questions and comments about both items. Councillor Mace, number 1, Councillor Jagger, number 2. Okay, Councillor Mace.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you very much for the report. I mainly just wanted to pass on my appreciation for everyone for the reduction in outstanding recommendations from 35 to 5. That's excellent work and great to hear. I think that the payment cards audit is very timely, as I think I just saw something from the Taxpayers Alliance this week where they had presumably done a freedom of information request to a certain council and found potential misuse of the cards, although I wouldn't necessarily trust them to give a fair and balanced view of what's going on in a council, but it's good that we have an eye on this thing. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor. And just to say, particularly in relation to purchase card transactions, it's a common area for audit review exactly for those reasons. And whilst it's reasonable assurance and there's steps to take, it's reassuring that we didn't find any examples of potentially fraudulent transactions. And I echo your comments in relation to management's implementation of recommendations. I think it's a positive reflection on the culture of the organisation.
Thank you both. Councillor Jagger.
My question is also related to the same area. On page 37, it says that one of the things that the review found is that receipts and transactions logs were not always being returned to finance as per policy. Can you just expand a little bit more on what that means?
It means basically when finance come to review it that there isn't a transaction log is basically a spreadsheet which I think lists the transactions over the previous month, which then finance can use to sort of tick off against the statements. And if you don't put the receipts in of a transaction log, there is, of course, potentially an increased risk of fraud. And a more minor point is you might not be able to completely correctly complete your VAT return. But it's important to stress through our sample testing, we didn't identify any potentially suspicious transactions, and we were able to evidence challenge by the finance department as well.
So it's a case of just people not putting the receipts in, or yeah, okay, thank you. Record keeping. Okay.
Thank you both. Any other questions, comments about the report and the proposal to defer? No. So let me just scroll back to the top of the report. And thanks again, Chris, for the report and all the work. And I've just remembered I need to pay a visit because it's already 12 months since I said hello at the museum. I can't believe, where's the time gone? I'll get some chocolates. Not just for you. Yeah, okay, I'll do that, yeah. So yeah, thanks for the report and all the hard work. So as a committee tonight, we need to decide whether we note the report, which is impossible not to do, and more sensibly, do we agree to defer the risk management audit to 26-27, given our new responsibilities taken on from P&R? Yes? Nods of heads? Excellent. Thank you, that's all agreed. Perfect, thank you. So the next item on the agenda, number 7, is the Treasury Management Mid-Year Report for 25-26. And hopefully, again, we're going to note this mid-year report. Handing over to Catherine. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So this is the, as the Chair said, is the mid-year Treasury Management Report for committee to note. As you know, Treasury Management is the management of Council's cash flows, its borrowings and investments, and the management of the associated risks. So within this report, it'd be useful to note paragraph 3.1, which shows the current capital financing requirement which is the spending in our capital programme that is not being financed by capital receipts, capital grants or contributions from revenue. We then take into account current external borrowing, usable reserves, which are unapplied capital grants and capital receipts, and also working capital. And then the table shows us the estimated shortfall in capital funding of 5.2 million, and this therefore points us to the need to borrow. Paragraph 3.3 to 3.4 shows the investments as at the 30th of September 25 and the forecast of a 99k surplus against interest receivable annual budget. The next paragraphs show the non-treasury investments. So these are the non-financial assets which the council holds primarily for the return and are listed in paragraph 3.6. Apologies, the total of non-treasury investments in the paragraph should say 19 million rather than 16.9 million. Finally, we come back to borrowing. The budget for interest payable was set at 574,000 in the expectation that we would have needed to borrow earlier in the year, which we have not done. So the forecast interest payable is now estimated at 464,000 for the year, 110,000 less than budget. The forecast does include projections of the need to borrow in the next few months, although the exact amounts and timings of these new loans have yet to be determined. And then finally, in Appendix A, shows our performance against the prudential indicators. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Catherine. So, any questions, comments on the report? Councillor Jagger? Yeah, go ahead.
It seems that we are having to borrow more, and I understand that a lot of that probably is driven by our capital investment and how we've used different pots of money. I just wonder if there are any other possibilities to avoid or delay the necessity for borrowing that we're currently considering at this stage, or is it's a case of it's now inevitable because of everything that has gone before?
It essentially boils down to our cash flows. So we obviously forecast our cash flow and monitor it closely. So we won't borrow until we just haven't got enough cash in the bank to pay our bills. I don't think there's any other. Go on.
But just to add, I think what we've done is utilised every resource that we had up until this point in time. So Cathy would have had large cash receipts. You know, grants were paid up front. We've held those for a number of years, and now we're in the delivery phases of those grants. So it is a matter of having to borrow. You know, we've got the sale of Weir Lane, which we are putting through, so there might be capital receipts from that, which helps reduce our need to actually borrow. But given the scale of the CFR, which is our capital financing requirement, is, you know, growing quite a bit there, then it's unlikely that we will get away without borrowing at all.
Thank you both. Councillor Sarah?
Thank you. Just ask a question about the prudential indicators of portfolio average credit rating. We've got down as AA minus, is that right? 49.
In terms of who we invest with, the credit rating, I mean, essentially you would have thought it might have been higher because we do a lot of our investments with the DMO, so it's effectively government, but there may be money held in HSBC bank, because we bank with them anyway on a day-to-day basis, so some of the cash might be in there. Plus we've got the property investment fund, which is that £3 million that we deposited as well. So the mix across the portfolio is AA minus as it stands. Got no reason to. right, yeah.
Can I just check within that, is there any significant exposure to tech that you can tell me about? Keep hearing a tech bubble is going to burst, I just wonder.
Because most of the deposit is either in property, like we said, or the government, I don't think we are particularly exposed. In the past, we have had the money in the money market funds, but again, that is sort of spread across a number of sort of either shares or investments. So I would imagine it's minutiae in terms of our exposure to that risk. Yeah.
Okay. No further questions, comments? So yeah, thank you very much, Catherine, for the report and presenting it tonight. We're noting the report. Those in favour of not noting the report, make yourself known. No. Grand, thank you very much. That's noted. Bear with. And yeah, now for something entirely different. We are going to, well, David is going to talk about the Regulation of Investigatory Powers Act 2000 in relation to this council. Without wanting to steal his thunder, I'm going to say nonetheless that our job is hopefully going to be to note that the policy regarding that legislation has been updated, and noting number 2 that no covert surveillance activity has been undertaken by this council. So I've been to a pre-meeting with Councillor de Sera, so I've had a spoiler, but I'm still intrigued. So over to you, David. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, the Regulation of Investigatory Powers Act, or RIPA as it's known, in 2000 gave local authorities powers to conduct covert surveillance under certain circumstances. Was very tightly regulated, so would restrict to criminal investigation of criminal matters, requires an approval from the Magistrates' Court, and the threshold for that is actually serious crime, carrying certain penalties. There's been a change to the Code of Practice for this, which advises that elected members should have our policy. We are required to have a policy. Whether we use those powers or not, we're required to have a policy. So that needs to be brought before members. It hasn't previously been before this committee. So we need to report on the policy and also any applications and use of the powers that we may make. Having said that, we have not used these powers or made an application for these powers for many years. Just bear with me as I'm logging back into my system. And actually, neither of our partner authorities, so Regulatory Services as hosted by Bromsgrove District Council and Revenues and Benefits as hosted by Malvern Hills District Council, have traditionally been those sorts of services where this activity may have been carried out in the past. The raising of the threshold has changed the environment there, which means that they haven't done any of that activity for many, many years. So really, there are some minor amendments to the policy which tidy up some references to government bodies that have now changed their titles, references to the new Code of Practice, and updates Part 5 on the acquisition of communications data. Again, something that we haven't done and don't have plans to do. And there are also some minor amendments that I need to make. Councillor Mace has very helpfully pointed out some typographical errors and some other minor errors in the report, so those will be amended following this committee. I'm not going to go into any more detail, but I'm clearly happy to take questions on that.
Thank you, David. Can I just check how minor are these errors? I mean, I'm sorry to be a pedant. I mean, I'm not a pedant because I didn't see them myself. So, are we talking spelling errors here?
So,
Councillor Mace, over to you.
It was only a number of minor things of like new lines in stray places. I think there was a few places where it referred to just he rather than he or her, which was inconsistent with the rest of the document. And I think I did also point out that MySpace and Bebo have been defunct social networks for about a decade at this point. We should probably update the list of social networks that are in there.
Yes, even I know that. And I'm old. Okay, yeah, Councillor Lamb.
Thank you. I'm just curious, under what kind of circumstances might a council of our tier actually use these kind of powers? And I have a vague recollection of a case a few years ago, and this was probably involving a county council rather than a district council, where a family were accused of lying about where they lived in order to gain entrance to a particular school because of the catchment area of that school. And I think it then got sort of caught up with the Human Rights Act actually as well. And that was an example I could think of where a local authority were using what I might call covert surveillance to find out where these people actually lived to show that they weren't entitled to send their kids to a particular school. But under what circumstances might a district council like Worcester use this kind of power?
I can give you a couple of examples. I can't name where they were as we're in public session, but in one council I had a report from a resident within the borough. So it was a council that operates at this level, and they said they'd got evidence that refuse crew were basically doing work on the side, and that there was a property that was having a massive refurbishment, and they were going round and basically putting all the waste out the skip and everything out the back onto the lorry, which obviously shouldn't be collected as part of normal residential waste. But the reason I mentioned that one is because that person ultimately became a covert human intelligence source, because they've got video footage on the outside of their property. So that was really interesting. And one other was where there were some thefts of machinery and equipment going on from Parks and Grounds, and it was being taken away from a locked area. So it was a caged locked area, but it was still items that were being taken away. So in order to help identify the culprit, there was a disguised camera that was put up. So the council went through a RIPA authorisation process for that. As David said earlier, it doesn't come up very often. And that's 2 occasions during a total 18 years that I've been involved in it. So it doesn't come up very often. You might get Revs and Bens using it a bit more for benefit fraud and so on.
I think if I might just add to that, I think DWP now carry out a lot of the fraud investigations for Revs and Bens. The example that Councillor Lamb gave many years ago, I think, and that may well have been around the time that the protections were strengthened and the bar was raised around criminal activity. You referenced the Human Rights Act, so I think the law was changed at that time, and that bar was lifted for certain serious criminal offences. Extreme cases of fly tipping where individuals are suspected, that's where it would be a directed surveillance. But generally, most councils at our level don't use these powers and haven't done for many years.
Councillor Sarah.
Thank you. So we now are told about this, which we weren't before as members. Why? I don't think we can do much about it, can we? Exactly. I mean, it wouldn't be our decision to go and investigate someone. We wouldn't monitor the investigation. We wouldn't say, no, you mustn't do that. I mean, exactly why are we being told now?
So the process, were we to want to use these powers, would be authorisation from a senior officer of the council, which is one of our directors, Lloyd Griffiths, who's mentioned in the policy. That would be to go and seek authorisations from the Magistrates' Court. So that's the process. The Code of Practice from the Commissioner's Office now states that members should have an overview of the activity. So members may be interested if there was a lot of use of these powers. So it wouldn't be about individual cases, but it'd be that overall, we have a policy, so you can see, and if you, in the policy, it's very clear that this is not something that we do, and it would be very exceptional circumstances, and if you are even considering doing this, you need to speak to your line manager, you need to speak to myself as a senior responsible officer and or the monitoring officer. So those are our checks and balances, and I think that's the role of this committee to see that we've got those checks and balances in place.
Thank you. Councillor Jagger?
In the unlikely event that these powers, which, you know, I know are very controversial nationally, but in the unlikely event that they were needed, would we have the training on in-house for people to be able to do this, or is that something that the council will have to seek out at that point? I realise it's highly unlikely that we would use these powers.
Yeah, we've got mandatory training for around 60 posts where we think that officers may be in situations where they may consider, where they need to know what is not permissible to make sure that they don't contravene that. Were we to go ahead, it would depend really on the circumstances. Covert surveillance can be as simple as sitting in a car watching a premises. I think probably I'm talking hypothetically now, so we would consider that depending on the circumstances if we were to try and find a circumstance where we needed to utilise the powers.
Thank you. Councillor Barnes?
Thank you. Would we know beforehand, or is it only after the event that we would be informed that this power would have been taken? Now, I'm thinking about things like shops selling tobacco underage, and whether that sort of situation would lead to surveillance of this kind.
So thank you, Chair. Yeah, so there's 2 points there. This would be a retrospective report of activity, and we would probably give a highlight of the activity rather than the individual circumstances. The example that you gave there would be a matter for trading standards, which is a county council function.
Thank you. So, on page 57, it relates this legislation to what I'm going to call this spying legislation from 2000, how it's compatible with the Human Rights Act in 1998. And it's very clear about what type of circumstance would basically allow an exemption from the Human Rights Act. So I'm not pretending to be a lawyer. I'm just wanting to highlight why we might allow, why staff might feel compelled to do surveillance. It has to be in the interests of society, has to be related, or public safety, or prevention of disorder or crime, protection of health or morals, protection of the rights and freedom of others, and it has to be proportionate. So those are the conditions why surveillance might have to take place. This is not obviously we all know it's not an arbitrary thing, but the conditions are very clear in the Human Rights Act. Yeah, I have to confess that when this came up for discussion in the the agenda planning meeting, I was a little taken by surprise because I wasn't aware that the councils had that remit to effectively spy on people. But having had this discussion in the pre-meet, I understand that there are exceptional circumstances where that sort of action might need to be taken. But you've given us an assurance that, well, you've said in the report that we've not had to take that action. We've not had to enact that process, which is obviously very reassuring. So any further questions or comments on the report? So, again, bear with me. Before we get to the recommendations, yeah, Councillor Barnes?
Sorry, just for clarification then, the question I asked earlier about maybe selling cigarettes to underage, if that then went to the licensing committee, we would have to know about that surveillance then, wouldn't we?
I'll hand over to David or Chris.
Yeah, I think again that's possibly a hypothetical question. So difficult for me to answer, I think, in committee here. Perhaps if we had a discussion outside the meeting about some more detail, I'm happy to talk to you then. But I don't want to give an answer that might not be correct.
Yeah, it's a completely valid question because I want to know, you know, on my watch whether people have been, you know, spied on. It's watched. On watched. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, yeah.
Chair, I don't think it's advisable for us to be talking about being spied on. I think what we've got to recognise is the District Council has a number of regulatory functions, and we are required to undertake a number of regulatory enforcement matters. Some of those are discretionary, some of them are not. Therefore, we must do so lawfully. Therefore, we must follow RIPA and the Human Rights Act. There is obviously a degree of officer discretion about what enforcement action is going to meet the public interest test, going to meet evidential standards, is going to be a proportionate means of achieving a legitimate aim, which is the ultimate legal test. But I think that it would be really difficult for us to take an example tonight and trace it all the way through, because in a number of instances it would be possible to do overt surveillance, not even covert surveillance, including potentially mystery shopping in shops and so forth. So I think really it's so nuanced about when you actually get into RIPA, and it's so unusual for a district council to be in RIPA territory, that I think what we're trying to encourage you to think is that this policy will be used very much by exception at a district council level rather than the norm. If you would require or be interested in a piece of assurance, an assurance report that explained to you the landscape within which reg services work, when surveillance is used and when it isn't, we'd be very happy to bring that back. But I think from here on in, the debate can only become unhelpful if we talk about things that we're only half aware of, and we talk about things like spying. It really is not where we set out to be. We're required to have a RIPA policy. We just really want your support to get that through tonight. If you're saying happy to approve it subject to having a further assurance report, we're happy to bring that. But I think that's really, we've got to sort of close the discussion at that point, if that's okay.
It's helpful to add to that. I've been in conversation with Simon Wilkes, who's the head of Worcester Regulatory Services. They do not carry out surveillance even under their trading standards. They haven't done any for quite some time. So it's a power that exists for all local authorities. It also exists for the police, and I'm sure the police use this fairly regularly to investigate the far more serious offences. It's something that's open to us. There may be circumstances, but we are required to have a policy which regulates how we may or may not operate that. There's delegations to officers within that. So for you tonight is to note really that this isn't something we have done for many, many years. We do need to have a policy, and this is a policy that we're asking you to note and note the updates to.
Councillor Mace.
I mean, I wasn't really planning on saying anything on this other than asking a question about that David already clarified. I think that the key thing for me is the second recommendation, that we haven't done any covert activity. We've not done any for many, many years, and neither of our shared services. At least because before I got into getting into elected politics, I was quite interested in the usage of this. And I think the reason we haven't done anything for many, many years is the strengthens, as David mentioned, the measures and reasons why this would happen were the bar was raised quite a long way in like 2012, so over a decade ago now. I think previously there may have been councils that used these powers in a way that possibly wasn't proportionate before that period, and that's why the bar was raised, or at least wasn't felt to be proportionate. But the bar has been raised so high that I don't think that these powers could be used unless it was an exceptionally good reason, and that's why we've not used them for many years. And so I'm comfortable with this report as it is.
Thank you, Councillor Jagger.
I'd like to add, I'm also comfortable. I know there's a lot of safeguards in the fact that it has to go to the magistrate's court before it can be used, and it's not up to us to decide whether it's right or not. And enough safeguards are in place to make sure that Citizens are not going to be, to use your word, spied on unnecessarily. I feel quite comfortable with the legal safeguards around this, so I'm happy with the policy too.
Thank you. Also like to thank Sian for giving me the politest telling off I might have in my whole life, albeit a rather public telling off. This is a downfall of having councils stacked with lay people. I apologise for my euphemism. I meant to say covert surveillance. I was trying to save time, but I've reversed that by having to explain what I've just explained. So we have two recommendations, one of which indeed is to note that we've had no covert surveillance activity undertaken by Worcester City Council. So that's recommendation 2. Recommendation 1 is that we note that the Regulation of Investigatory Powers Act policy for this council has been updated as we have been told to do. So do we take those two recommendations together? Perfect. Thank you very much. Thank you, David, for the report. Thank you, Councillor Mace, as well, for doing what I should have done. Fantastic. I have been notified of an item for any other business. Councillor Lamb has raised something. Can I check? No one else? No? So, Councillor Lamb, the floor is yours.
Thank you. I think this is a question really for Sian. I understand that there's going to be a governance review starting in January next year. This is related to local government reorganisation, looking into the concept of replacing Worcester City Council, which obviously is going to cease in being from 2028, with a parish council type arrangement, looking at things like scope, powers, viability and so on. What role we're obviously called the governance committee, what role will we play? Because I understand that's going to go to P&R. I'm just a bit mindful that will the governance committee play any role in that governance review? And how will we input into this as councillors when this review takes place? Because I think it's something that I certainly, and I know other members, feel very, very strongly about. And I think it's one of those things that needs to be considered as widely as possible, rather than just by a subsection of the council in making decisions about where we're going to go with this.
Through you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor Lamb. It's very timely because we were discussing that this morning. I suppose the first point I'd want to make in clarification is that it wouldn't be possible legally for the City Council to be replaced by a town council. They are entirely different legal entities at the scale and functions that they are given. I understand across the spectrum there is a great deal of member interest in a governance review around a town council. We may be able to call ourselves a city council, but we would not have the legal status or the resources or the powers to be what we are at the moment. The governance review there is in the 2007 Act, there is a process for undertaking the governance review. It is very much acknowledged and understood, and in fact something I said in the the extraordinary council meeting we had on the 11th of February this year, when we started our local government reorganisation conversations at full council, that we would want member work streams working on things that were close to people's hearts. It is true that we took the paper about local governance to Policy and Resources Committee in I'm going to say September, but there is no reason why Policy and Resources Committee has to hold that agenda, or it couldn't be supplemented by other work. And the conversation that we had as an officer leadership team this morning was that we might ask for a member working group to be stood up to work alongside officers. There's several different facets to this, and they do need unpicking. So the functions of it, let's call it a town council for the time being, the powers, functions, responsibilities, opportunities of a town council, they are separate, and that's the part that the legislation does look at through a governance review. They are separate to the conversations around this building, and they are separate to other things that we are interested in around local governance as recognised by devolution, so the area committee agenda, for example. So there's a few different things to unpack. I think officers would very much welcome a member working group around that. I think that it's then a question of how do we get there? Do we come to a meeting like this and set that up? Do we just write to all members and ask them to identify themselves? I'd rather almost do that in order to get us going. But I do think it's important that we set the framework at the outset around some terms of reference, and members are very clear what they're trying to achieve, and that will then itself separate out, I think, into different aspects of the work. So very much agree, member working group, task and finish group, call it what you like, very much a role for this committee, very much a role for P&R, ultimately all goes back through full council, and we do see it as a significant piece of work for the next 12 months.
Yeah, I was just going to make the point that, you know, time is of the essence, isn't it? Because I can imagine if there are elections to this town council, that would make sense for them to be at the same time as the elections to the new unitary authority in May 2027, and things move very quickly, so it's important to get this all done and dusted, I think. But come back to my earlier point that I think the broader range of councillors involved, the better, I think, on this particular issue.
Thank you. So procedurally, would that be a motion from Councillor Lamb or whoever to full council to form a working group? Would that be the process?
Through you, Chair, I don't think it's necessary, because I think we've heard loud and clear from all political groups that they want this explored, so it would seem to be a shame to have to wait for a meeting to... We hear that as an instruction. What I'm just advising is there are different facets to it, and some of that I laid out in the Policy and Resources Committee paper, and I do think that's got to be understood as we set the terms of reference. So the difference between this building, the only aspect of governance that the government seems to be interested in, which is area committees, and then the local governance that's of interest to here in terms of the civic functions, that, if you like, the civic life of the city, what a town council could add to that, etc. They are different facets. So I think that if we write out to all members and ask for people to step forward, then there's then got to be a way of having the conversation about how to set the terms of reference to that, which we could do quite democratically, just using SharePoint and just let it be open for 2 weeks and close it. I don't think I want to sort of wait for lots of formal meetings in the diary, but then there needs to be a working group that ultimately group leaders would need to support and say, this is the working group cross-party, and then we would then need to plumb in the dates and just to start to work through that process. So I'm happy to take it as an instruction again from tonight if you wish. I do very much hear you, but I still think that there's some unpacking to do around Town Council, Guildhall, governance as the government are talking about it, and then understand where people's priorities lie in terms of the workload.
Does that need a formal proposal? Because I would certainly propose that.
Your better half, sorry. I'll come back to you, Councillor Lamb.
I was just going to echo that, and I'll leave Matt to make a formal proposal, but also we talked a lot when you talked earlier in the meeting about the importance of communication and how that works with staff with resilience. I think it's important that this is such an important issue for councillors that we need to make sure it doesn't get lost amongst other issues. So, however, I think absolutely a cross-party member working group is the way forward, but also regular communications with all members dedicated that is just that subject, so everybody else has the opportunity to know what's happening at relevant positions, so that when it gets to full council, people have had that opportunity to feed in. So if there's an on-party working group and it's going off in a direction that particular members have concerns about or want to raise, they can actually feed that in rather than wait and it all gets derailed at a full council meeting.
Thank you. Apologies, Councillor Lamb. So you're asking whether this committee has to vote on a formal instruction? Whether
yes, a proposal for a formal instruction from this committee for a cross-party working committee to look into this, instructed by officers as well.
Yeah, well, firstly, just thinking aloud, building on your suggestion, I think it would make sense to communicate to all members that a conversation has taken place at Audit and Governance Committee about Town Council. We want a formal working group and we are obliged to look at terms of reference. That's where we're at. And by sending that email, you're inviting all members not here tonight to either say yes or no. Is that?
I don't want to steal the thunder of the working group, but can I clarify, is it the Town Council is a vehicle to achieve certain ambitions that lots of people have in terms of the legacy of Worcester. But I've understood that's not the only thing that members are interested in. They're also interested in this building and civic functions and all sorts. So I think just how we characterise it, I've understood it to be local governance in Worcester. Is that right, would you say? Because the town council is a way of achieving that.
Yeah.
But I'm concerned that there are limitations around that. And
yeah. So you know, look, Hereford has had its own town council. Herefordshire has been a unitary authority for 20 years, and yet Hereford has got its own council, which is responsible for, it may rent the town hall from the Herefordshire County Council, but it chooses the mayor, it has a council, it raises a precept, which could amount to, say, £3 million of money, which could be spent on nice things. So, yeah, I mean, surely the committee would be about pinning down exactly how many members it would have, what kind of responsibilities it would have. Would it take responsibility for the Guildhall? Would it choose the mayor, etc., etc., etc.? How big would it be? Because obviously there's a big discussion about the role of St Peter's and Warndon Village, which are two existing parishes within the boundaries of what we recognise as Worcester City Council. But also what I don't want to be doing is that there's a committee working parallel with P&R at the same time. You know, we want there to be one body looking at this, which is going to come up with set proposals, which then goes before full council for its final approval. What we don't want is for people to be sat around in committees doing something and then P&R say, well, we've been doing a parallel piece of work and our piece of work takes precedence. I think that needs to be clarified as well. Who has the final say on this? Full council is sovereign, I realise, so have the final say, but there's no point in replicating two streams of work.
Well, I think that point can be made in the initial update on tonight's discussion. And we don't want to duplicate effort or put all effort in and then find out that we're being overruled by committee. So, yeah, I think you kind of discussed in terms of reference just now.
Yeah.
We could put that in the message.
Yeah.
Sorry, go
So
ahead.
I'd like to formally propose it.
And I'll second it.
Well, it's a formal proposal. Have we ever had that under AOB? Does that happen? Does that happen? I don't remember anyway. Am I allowed? I should know these things. Well, I'm happy. Yeah, formal proposal's been made, it's been seconded. But just, you know, for clarity, in a sentence, can you just remind us what we're voting on?
Yeah, to set up a cross-party working committee to investigate the potential of a Worcester Town Council under the new devolution regime.
Beautifully done. So all those in favour of the proposal from Councillor Lamb? All those against? All those abstaining? Councillor Mace, I'll see you afterwards. Okay. Thank you. I think it was a really important discussion. Thank you, Councillor Lamb. Thank you, Sean. Well, we have come to the end of the meeting. We've had the presentation. The clock's chimed 9 o'clock. So thank you very much, everyone, for your time. And if I don't see you before Christmas, have a good one. Thank you. Oh, no, but too eager to go and play darts with Councillor Mace and harangue him for abstaining. We've got a pink paper to talk about. So we're going to go into closed set. Apologies. Julian, you did give me a heads up. Hopefully this is going to be a brief one. We have some not exempt from public meeting minutes, pink paper. So we're going to close the public session and hopefully briefly discuss those minutes.